ignored after a car crash, while the favorite got praised. Fraud scandal changed everything. Before we dive in, Reddit Pearls needs your help. The channel is struggling, and every like and sub makes a huge difference. I appreciate you sticking around. Now, let's jump into the story. Hey, so this one's been sitting with me for longer than I'd like to admit. Not a loud break or an obvious betrayal. More like a creeping realization that seeps in slowly and leaves a mark you can't explain. Growing up, I wasn't the high achiever or the rebel. I was the quiet one, the in-between. The middle kid. I didn't demand much, and I didn't draw attention. My older brother, Austin, was the type of person people noticed without trying. He played 3 sports, made the honor roll every semester, and practically lived on stage during award nights. My parents followed him around like he was the center of gravity. Lily, the youngest, was full of spark and softness. She had a laugh you could hear through walls and a way of making people feel special just by being near them. She got away with things I wouldn't dream of, and no one batted an eye. There was always a camera pointed at her or a plate being passed to her first. As for me, I was steady, predictable. I cleaned up after myself, stayed out of trouble, got decent grades, and showed up on time. I think part of me hoped that doing everything right would eventually get noticed. That maybe, if I kept being reliable, someone would finally say, "We see you." It didn't work out that way. Last year, all those quiet disappointments bubbled to the surface. I was driving home from a long shift one night when another car ran a red light. I never saw it coming. Just the sound of tires screeching, the explosion of glass and metal, and then everything went dark. When I came to, the lights above me were too bright, and the pain was everywhere. My arm was shattered, my ribs were bruised, and I couldn't move my neck without wanting to scream. The EMT said I was lucky to be alive. That word, lucky, felt strange, almost cruel. There's nothing lucky about waking up alone in a hospital gown with wires taped to your chest. Eventually, I reached for my phone. I didn't want to call anyone, but I needed to hear something familiar. I dialed my parents. My voice was shaking, and I could barely get the words out. I told them I'd been in an accident. I was okay, but not really. I needed them. What followed wasn't panic or urgency. It was silence. A breath held a second too long. And then my mom said they were out of town. They had driven hours away to attend an awards ceremony for Austin. He was being recognized by his college, a scholarship, a speech, photos with important people. They booked everything weeks in advance. She said they were already checked into the hotel. She said they were glad I wasn't in critical condition, that I was strong, that they'd keep in touch and call me soon. She said to rest, to let the nurses help me. Then she hung up. I stared at the ceiling for the rest of the night. The beeping of machines blurred into background noise. I wasn't crying. I was just cold, frozen in a feeling I didn't have words for. It wasn't the crash that changed everything. It was the realization that I could be broken and still not worth the detour. I didn't tell anyone about the call. I couldn't. It was too raw, and saying it out loud made it feel even worse. I went over it in my head again and again, trying to make sense of it. Maybe they didn't understand how bad it was. Maybe they thought I'd bounce back. But then I remembered how long they paused before responding. That hesitation, it told me everything. After 3 days in the hospital, I was discharged. They gave me a sling, painkillers, and a list of follow-up appointments. I signed the papers with my good hand and called a cab. My bank account barely covered the ride. The driver looked at me through the rearview mirror and asked, "You got someone waiting at home?" I nodded. I don't know why I lied. I guess I didn't want to say. No, my family's celebrating my brother. I got home to a cold apartment. My kitchen sink was full. The fridge was nearly empty. I sat on the couch for hours, staring at the wall. The quiet was louder than any siren. Later that night, my parents called. They sounded cheerful, told me about Austin's speech, how proud they were, how good the food was at the reception. They asked if I was resting. I said yes. They asked if I had eaten. I said yes. I lied through all of it. Not because I wanted to spare them, but because I didn't want to give them another opportunity to choose something else. When the call ended, I didn't move. I just let the silence stretch. I'd always felt like a background character in my family, but now it felt official. And once you realize you're not someone's priority, it's hard to pretend like you ever were. That week blurred together, melting into a fog of medications, dull pain, and endless silence. I moved from the bed to the couch and back again, dragging my blanket with me like a security tether. My body ached, not just from the injuries, but from the strain of feeling unseen. I took my painkillers at regular intervals, not because I remembered to, but because the pain reminded me. The television ran for hours with reruns of shows I'd already seen. I wasn't watching. The noise just filled the silence that threatened to swallow me whole. Friends texted every so often, kind words and well-meaning check-ins that I couldn't bring myself to engage with. I replied with short, emotionless messages, just enough to acknowledge them. No one pressed, and part of me was grateful, but another part wondered how long it would take before they, too, stopped asking. Food became a secondary thought. I remembered to order groceries when the dizziness became too much to ignore. I ate crackers, microwaved soup, and drank water from the bathroom tap. I couldn't cook with one arm, and I didn't have the energy to care. Days bled into one another, gray, uneventful, slow. Each one the same, muted, numb, and stretched out with too much time. Then, Austin called. I wasn't expecting it. His voice was upbeat, casual, the kind of tone people use when nothing is wrong in their world. He opened by talking about how busy things had been, how amazing the awards ceremony turned out, and how everyone was so impressed. He said he'd heard about my accident and that he hoped I was doing okay now. But that was it. He didn't ask if I needed help. He didn't ask if I was alone. He didn't ask if I could use anything, not even something small. He switched topics, talking about internships and professors who praised his potential. There was no pause, no space for me to respond meaningfully. I told him everything sounded great. I said I was glad for him. I didn't mention the bruises still blooming across my side or how I was rationing pain meds so I wouldn't run out before my refill. I didn't say that I hadn't had a real meal in days. I didn't say I'd cried the night before, staring at a ceiling that felt more like a lid. After he hung up, I held the phone in my lap for a while. The screen went dark. The room didn't feel any different. That conversation crystallized something for me, something I'd been too afraid to name. I couldn't keep doing this. Couldn't keep reaching out, hoping someone would see me. So I started retreating. It wasn't a big gesture, just small things. I stopped responding to family group chats. I muted the notifications. I removed the reminders for birthdays, holidays, and check-in calls. Not out of spite, not to punish anyone, but because I had nothing left to give to people who didn't notice when I was gone. There's a moment when even the quietest person, the one who never asks for much, finally realizes they deserve more than crumbs. Update. It's been about 2 months since the accident, and things have shifted. Not all at once, and not because of some major event, but in small, steady ways that are starting to reshape how I live. I've stopped waiting for texts from my parents. I used to check my phone every morning, expecting a message that never came. Now, I keep it on silent. I don't look for their names anymore. The silence is still there, but it feels less like a void and more like a boundary. My recovery has been slow, but I'm getting better. The cast came off last week, and physical therapy is hard, but at least I'm moving again. I've been cooking small meals, nothing fancy, but it feels good to stand at the stove again. There's comfort in small routines. I started journaling too. At first, it was just a way to vent, to get everything out without having to explain it to someone else. But now, it's become a kind of map. A way to understand the space between who I was before the crash and who I'm becoming. A friend I hadn't spoken to in years reached out recently. Said she saw a post about the accident through someone else and wanted to check in. We met for coffee last week. It felt like warmth I didn't realize I'd been missing. That's the thing. I've started noticing who shows up. Not out of guilt or habit, but because they care. And it's not always who I expected. And the people who've disappeared? I'm learning how to stop chasing them. This whole experience forced me to look at my family through a lens I'd never used before. And what I saw was painful. But it's also been clarifying. I'm not angry. Not anymore. Just clearer about where I stand. Maybe that's what healing looks like, not erasing the hurt, but learning to stand beside it without letting it take over. A few days ago, my mom sent a photo in the family group chat, Austin holding a framed award, all smiles, flanked by my parents. The caption read, "So proud of our boy." No message to me directly. No call. Just that one image, floating in a chat I had already muted. And I didn't feel anything. I looked at it for a moment, then put my phone down. It didn't stir sadness or resentment. It didn't hurt the way I expected. I just felt detached. Like watching someone else's highlight reel. That might sound cold, but honestly, it felt like growth. A shift. The ache that used to follow me around everywhere had finally started to loosen its grip. Instead, I focused on my list for the day, therapy exercises, a grocery run, checking in on a friend who'd recently lost their job. These were my priorities now. These were the moments that mattered. I've begun painting again, too. Nothing serious. Just watercolors on old paper, sometimes just shapes or brushstrokes. But it feels like movement. Like proof that I'm still here, still creating something for myself. More importantly, I've started choosing who gets access to me. I've realized that just because someone's family doesn't mean they're entitled to all of you, especially when they never asked how you've been. That realization isn't cruel. It's liberating. And in this quiet shift, something inside me has started to feel whole again. Lately, I've been sitting with the version of myself that emerged from all of this, not the one still tied to old wounds, but the one who's learned to carry them without letting them control everything. There's power in that kind of presence, even if it looks quieter than the kind celebrated in group photos or family speeches. I've started making choices for myself, not out of rebellion, but out of respect for my energy, my time, and my peace. It's surprising how many decisions I used to make with the hope that maybe someone would notice. Now, I've let go of the need to be seen by the people who've always chosen to look elsewhere. One of my cousins reached out recently. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe longer. She asked how I'd been, said she missed our conversations. I debated whether to answer honestly, whether to let her in on what had really been going on. And eventually, I did. I told her the truth, not all of it, but enough to explain why I'd gone quiet. She didn't try to fix it. She just listened. That alone felt like a gift. Sometimes, the people who stay aren't the ones you expect, but they're the ones who matter most. And they help you realize that family isn't only defined by blood or shared memories, it's defined by presence, by effort, by showing up when it's inconvenient. I've stopped keeping score. I've stopped rereading old texts or hoping for sudden insight from people who rarely call. It's not that I don't care, it's that I've redirected that care. I've poured it into friendships that feel like home, into late-night walks where I can breathe freely, into moments that are mine and no one else's. There's still grief. That part hasn't gone away. It arrives in waves, in unexpected places, at the grocery store, in the smell of hospital soap, in the silence of a Sunday afternoon. But now, when it shows up, I don't run from it. I sit with it. I acknowledge it. And then I go on. This isn't a triumphant ending. It's a grounded one. One built slowly, piece by piece, from the parts of myself I nearly forgot I had. I'm not trying to be okay for anyone else anymore. I'm just trying to be okay for myself. Update. It's been 4 months since the crash, and the world looks different now, not dramatically, but in small, meaningful ways that only I would notice. My routines have settled into something quieter, more mindful. The mornings feel less heavy. The silence no longer feels like an accusation. It's just silence now. My parents still haven't reached out beyond the occasional family group message, and I've stopped expecting them to. It used to feel like I was holding my breath, waiting for something, an apology, a conversation, a moment of clarity. But I'm not holding my breath anymore. I'm just breathing. I recently attended a small gathering with some old friends, people I hadn't seen since college. Someone asked how my family was, and I didn't flinch when I said, "We don't talk much these days." It was the truth, and it didn't need a long explanation. I've also started helping out at a local community center. Just a few hours a week, organizing events, working with kids, and cleaning up after art classes. It grounds me. Being part of something that asks for nothing, but my presence has been healing in ways I didn't expect. No performance, no comparisons. Just people showing up. Sometimes I look back and wonder how long I was willing to shrink myself just to fit into a role my family had written for me. The quiet one. The reliable one. The one who never caused problems. But that version of me didn't make room for grief, or needs, or disappointment. It didn't allow space for pain to exist openly. Now, I've reclaimed that space. There are still moments when I wish things had been different, when I think about what it might have felt like to be truly chosen by the people who raised me. But I no longer tie my worth to that absence. My story doesn't end in that hospital room, or with a missed phone call, or a photo of someone else's victory. My story is still unfolding on my terms, in my voice, surrounded by people who choose to be here. And maybe that's the quietest kind of strength. Thanks for staying with me through this. I didn't think writing it all out would bring me peace, but it has. I've stopped waiting to be chosen, because I've already chosen myself.